Ethan Hayes stared out the rain-streaked window of the commuter train, the blurred cityscape of Manhattan receding into a gray smear. 15 years. 15 years he'd spent clawing his way up the corporate ladder, enduring soul-crushing meetings and endless spreadsheets, all for what? A corner office with a view of a brick wall and a constant knot in his stomach? The recent layoff at Omnicorp had been a stark wake-up call, a cold splash of reality confirming what he'd suspected for years. His dedication was a one-way street. But now, the concrete jungle was fading, replaced by the promise of green fields and a slower pace, a journey of discovery, he hoped. Grandma Eleanor's passing had been sudden, a quiet departure in her sleep. The loss hit him harder than he expected. He hadn't been the most attentive grandson, swallowed up by the demands of city life. He missed their Saturday afternoon calls where she'd regale him with stories of Maplewood, the small rural suburb upstate where she'd lived her entire life. Now, she was gone, and he was the unexpected inheritor of her quaint, Victorian-era home. Maplewood, he remembered summers spent there as a child, exploring the woods behind her house, catching fireflies in the twilight, and listening to her stories about the town's history. He wasn't going back just for the property. A part of him yearned for the simplicity and genuine connection he'd lost in the urban grind. The layoff at Omnicorp had been the final push. He couldn't take another soulless corporate role. Maybe, just maybe, Maplewood offered a chance at a fresh start. A thrilling story yet unwritten. The train pulled into the quaint Maplewood station, a far cry from the bustling Grand Central Terminal. He stepped onto the platform, taking a deep breath of the crisp, clean air. It smelled of pine and damp earth, a welcome change from the exhaust fumes of the city. As he walked towards the familiar house at 3 Oak Street, he noticed how little had changed. The same manicured lawns, the same friendly wave from Mrs. Henderson across the street. It was almost too perfect. The house itself was exactly as he remembered it. A 2-story Victorian with a wraparound porch, painted a cheerful yellow. Grandma Eleanor's presence lingered in every room. As he walked the perimeter of the property, he noticed it. On one side, the perfectly manicured lawn ended, replaced by overgrown bushes and trees that bordered the neighborhood. He found that the house rested right on the edge of the estates, one of the most pristine homeowners associations in New York. He looked forward to being back in nature, but he had heard that HOAs can be real pain in the neck. He hoped his plot wouldn't be a pain in the neck, but it looked that way from the start. As he looked out into the forest, he hoped it wouldn't cause too many unsolved mystery to come out to be explored. He knew that inheriting this house, this life, was a blessing. Yet, something felt uneasy. He was a well-meaning pushover. He wanted people to like him, so he never pushed back. That had to change, or Maplewood wouldn't work for him. He needed to fight. But did he have the strength? His journey of discovery had just begun, and he had a feeling it wouldn't be as peaceful as he'd hoped. Barely a week had passed in Maplewood before Ethan received a crisp, official-looking letter bearing the Riverwood Estates Homeowners Association logo. He'd been expecting it, dreading it, ever since he'd realized his property line sat at the edge of the community. The letter requested his presence at a meeting with the HOA president, Richard Thompson, at his earliest convenience. No time was specified, no reason given beyond the generic neighborhood concerns. It felt less like an invitation, and more like a summons. He wanted to be a good neighbor, but this felt intrusive already. Ethan, still settling into his new life and grappling with the ghosts of corporate oppression, debated ignoring the letter. But Grandma Eleanor had always preached neighborliness, and he didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. Besides, maybe it was just a formality, a quick hello and a discussion of lawn care. He was a pushover. He could handle pleasantries, even if he suspected they were anything but. He found Thompson's office in a newly constructed building on the edge of town. Thompson's office was a sprawling complex, clearly designed as the local real estate empire. The waiting room was sparsely furnished, but impressive, and Thompson's name was everywhere as it was his building. When he arrived, the receptionist, a woman with tightly permed hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen it all, simply nodded towards a closed door. No smile, no Mr. Hayes. So glad you could make it. It was another subtle power play, a reminder that he was entering Thompson's domain. Ethan knocked tentatively and stepped inside. Richard Thompson sat behind a large mahogany desk, the kind that screamed authority. He was a man in his late 50s, with a carefully coiffed haircut, a tailored suit, and a disconcerting lack of warmth in his eyes. The man never shook Ethan's hand, nor did he look up from what he was writing. "Hayes," Thompson said finally, his voice gruff. "Take a seat. I'm a busy man." Ethan sat, his apprehension growing. He wanted to make a good first impression, to show he wanted to get along, but Thompson wasn't making it easy. Thompson finally looked up, his gaze piercing. "So you're the new owner of the Eleanor Hayes property. Congratulations, I suppose." There was no warmth in the congratulations, merely a hint of condescension. "Thank you," Ethan replied, trying to sound confident. "I'm looking forward to being part of the community," Thompson scoffed. "Part of the community? That remains to be seen, Mr. Hayes. You see, your property, while technically outside the Riverwood Estate's boundary, still impacts our community. We have standards, Mr. Hayes, and those standards must be upheld." Ethan frowned. I'm not sure I understand. Thompson leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Just because your property is technically on the edge doesn't mean you're exempt." Ethan felt his polite facade crumbling. "But I thought, I'm not actually in the HOA?" Thompson's eyes narrowed. "We can make arrangements." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air. Ethan had been warned about people like this, and he had to wonder if this was what corporate oppression felt like for so many years. Thompson truly did not care about Ethan. He thought the little power he had was worth more than someone's respect. His heart hammered in his chest. This wasn't a friendly welcome. It was a power grab. This unsolved mystery of his situation was just at the beginning. The fine arrived a week later, delivered by a teenage boy on a rusty bicycle, looking thoroughly embarrassed. It was a formal printed notice, citing a violation of Riverwood Estate's HOA Regulation 3.2 by excessive foliage and untended shrubbery. The amount, $250. It was only the tip of the unsolved mystery. Ethan stared at the notice in disbelief. Excessive foliage, untended shrubbery. His backyard, while admittedly not as manicured as his neighbors, was hardly a jungle. He'd been planning to tackle it this weekend, but life, settling in, and escaping the corporate world took time. Thompson, it seemed, wasn't interested in excuses. This was more than just about lawn care. It was about control. Ethan reread the fine several times. Frustration simmered within him. He called his real estate agent, who confirmed his initial understanding. Ethan's property was not formally part of the HOA. She advised him to ignore the fine, suggesting it was a bluff, a tactic to intimidate him into joining. But Ethan knew Thompson wasn't the type to back down easily. He decided to confront him, to reason with him, to try, once again, to be the reasonable, agreeable neighbor. He was still in the mindset of avoiding conflict, a hard habit to break after years of corporate politicking. He walked over to the Thompson real estate office. The same permed hair receptionist gave him a barely perceptible nod as he approached. "Mr. Thompson is a busy man," she recited as if on a loop. "He is not available right now." Ethan sighed. "Could you at least give him this? It's about the fine I received." The receptionist took the notice with thinly veiled disdain, saying, "I'll see if he can fit you in later." Defeated, Ethan walked back to his property. As he did, Marcus, the eccentric young man from next door, bounded over. Marcus, always dressed in a mismatched superhero costume, was a constant source of amusement and bewilderment. He was someone Ethan wanted to become better friends with. "Hey, Ethan, what you got there?" "A supervillain's ransom demand," Marcus asked, peering at the notice. Ethan chuckled, despite his annoyance. "Something like that. It's a fine from the HOA for excessive shrubbery." Marcus burst out laughing. "The Riverwood Gestapo? Seriously? They're coming after you? You've got like 3 bushes and a dandelion?" "I know, right? It's ridiculous. But Thompson seems determined to make my life miserable." Ethan explained the conversation he had with Thompson, and how he wasn't even a part of the HOA. Marcus furrowed his brow under his plastic superhero mask. "Thompson, huh? Yeah, he's a real piece of work. Thinks he's got the right to tell everyone how to live. Thinks his lawn is a real journey of discovery. He does. Thinks they are better than everyone else." Ethan found himself smiling. "You know him? Know him? Know him?" "He tried to tell me I couldn't wear my superhero suit in public. Said it lowered the property values. Can you believe that? I told him I was protecting the neighborhood from boredom." Marcus struck a heroic pose. The absurdity of the situation hit Ethan, and he started to laugh. Here he was, stressed about a ridiculous fine, being lectured by a man dressed as Captain Comet. Maybe Maplewood wasn't so bad after all. At least it had character. Maybe you're right, Marcus, Ethan said, still chuckling. Maybe I shouldn't let Thompson get to me. That's the spirit. Fight the power, Ethan. Embrace your inner superhero. Marcus exclaimed, punching the air. Ethan smiled. While he wasn't ready to embrace his inner superhero, he did feel a flicker of something new. Something stronger. He wasn't going to be bullied by Thompson. He wasn't going to be a pushover anymore. He wasn't sure how he would fight back, but he knew he would. This was turning into a thrilling story after all. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, sandwiched between a supermarket flyer and a coupon for discounted pizza. It was a formal, legal-looking document, citing multiple violations of Riverwood Estates' HOA regulations, accumulated fines, and a threat of legal action, culminating in the possible eviction of Ethan Hayes from his property. This was how Thompson planned to resolve this unsolved mystery. Ethan's hands trembled as he read the notice. He'd expected Thompson to be persistent, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. Eviction over a few overgrown bushes and a disagreement about neighborhood aesthetics? It was ludicrous, terrifying, and utterly infuriating. He had to do something more with this thrilling story. He spent the next hour pacing his living room, the eviction notice clutched in his hand like a weapon. He considered ignoring it, hoping it was just another empty threat. But he knew Thompson well enough now to understand he wouldn't back down. He was a power-hungry madman with the city council behind him. He needed help, real help, and he knew exactly who to call. Sarah Walker had been Ethan's best friend since grade school. She was smart, compassionate, and fiercely loyal. She'd always been the voice of reason, the steady hand in his often chaotic life. More importantly, she was a brilliant attorney, specializing in property law. She was now the source of his strength. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hey, Ethan, what's up?" Sarah answered, her voice warm and familiar. "Sarah, I need your help. I'm in a bit of trouble." He explained the situation, his voice shaking as he described Thompson's harassment, the fines, and finally, the eviction notice. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then Sarah spoke, her voice now serious and focused. "Eviction? Ethan, that's insane. Send me everything, every letter, every notice, everything you've got. I'll look into this immediately." Relief washed over Ethan. Just hearing Sarah's voice, knowing she was on his side, made him feel a little less helpless. "Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. Don't worry, Ethan. We'll fight this. Thompson's just a bully, and bullies don't like it when you stand up to them," Sarah replied. Ethan spent the rest of the day gathering the documents and emails, compiling a timeline of events. It felt surreal, like something out of a bad movie. He, Ethan Hayes, software engineer, was embroiled in a legal battle with a power-hungry HOA president over his overgrown shrubbery. This was his journey of discovery. The next morning he emailed everything to Sarah, along with a heartfelt message expressing his gratitude and his trust in her abilities. He knew Sarah, but was this all too big for her? Or would she succeed? "Okay, Ethan," Sarah said when she called back that afternoon. "I've reviewed everything, and I have some good news. You're not actually part of the Riverwood Estates HOA." Ethan blinked, stunned. "What? But Thompson has been acting like I am." "That's the thing, Ethan," Sarah explained. "I did some digging into the HOA's incorporation documents and the property records. Your grandmother's property line was drawn just outside the HOA boundaries back in the 1960s. Thompson's been bluffing this whole time. He has no legal basis to enforce any rules or fines on you." Ethan felt a surge of anger mixed with relief. "So he's been lying?" "Essentially, yes. It seems Councilman Thompson has been abusing his power and trying to expand the HOA's reach beyond its legal limits," Sarah replied. The weight of that statement hung in the air, but Ethan had Sarah by his side, and now he knew he would be okay. Armed with Sarah's legal expertise and the revelation that he was, in fact, not bound by the Riverwood Estates HOA, Ethan felt a surge of determination he hadn't experienced since his early days in Silicon Valley, writing code late into the night. Fueled by caffeine and the ambition to change the world. He may not have been changing the world, but maybe he could change his neighborhood, and that's where his journey had begun. This legal battle was no longer just about his overgrown shrubbery. It was about standing up to bullying, about protecting individual rights, about ensuring that no one else in Maplewood had to endure Thompson's overreach. His new thrilling story had just begun. Sarah, ever the strategic planner, helped Ethan craft a presentation to deliver to the Maplewood City Council. The goal was to expose Thompson's abuse of power, to clarify the legal boundaries of the HOA, and to request a formal investigation into Thompson's actions. "We need to make this clear, concise, and irrefutable," Sarah advised over a video call. "Stick to the facts. Avoid getting emotional, no matter how tempting it might be. You have the truth on your side. You just need to present it effectively." Ethan nodded, taking copious notes. He knew public speaking wasn't his forte. In corporate settings, he'd always preferred to stay behind the scenes, crafting code, analyzing data, letting others handle the presentations. But this was different. This was personal. He wouldn't let his natural reticence hold him back. He had Marcus on his side, and he knew there was help at every corner. He spent the next few days hunched over his computer, fueled by coffee and nervous energy. He poured his frustration, his anger, his newfound sense of purpose into crafting the perfect presentation. He leveraged his skills as a software engineer, creating visually compelling charts and graphs to illustrate the HOA's boundaries, Thompson's power grabs, and the financial impact of his overzealous fines. He included screenshots of emails, copies of legal documents, and testimonials from other residents who had been similarly harassed by Thompson. He enlisted Marcus's help with the visuals, the superhero enthusiast, surprisingly adept at graphic design. Marcus, energized by the opportunity to fight a real-life supervillain, created eye-catching slides that highlighted the absurdity of Thompson's actions, adding a touch of humor to an otherwise serious presentation. Marcus, while new to the task, was showing Ethan how everyone in the world needed a little help. The day of the city council meeting dawned bright and clear. Ethan, dressed in a freshly pressed shirt and tie, felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. He practiced his speech in front of the mirror, trying to project an air of confidence he didn't quite feel. As he walked into the Maplewood Town Hall, he was surprised to see a crowd of people gathered outside. Many of them were his neighbors, holding signs that read "Stop Thompson's Tyranny" and "Support Ethan Hayes." A wave of warmth washed over him. He wasn't alone in this fight. Inside the council chambers, the atmosphere was tense. Thompson sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. He exuded an air of authority, a sense that he was used to getting his way. Ethan took a deep breath and approached the podium. He began his presentation, his voice trembling slightly at first, but growing stronger as he delved into the facts, the figures, the evidence that clearly demonstrated Thompson's abuse of power. He presented the legal boundaries of the HOA, highlighting the fact that his property was not included. He showed the council copies of the fines, the eviction notice, the threatening emails. He shared the stories of other residents who had been similarly harassed by Thompson, their voices filled with fear and frustration. As he spoke, he could see the expressions on the council members' faces changing. Initial skepticism gave way to concern, then to disbelief, and finally to outrage. When he finished, a hush fell over the room. Then, a wave of applause erupted, led by his neighbors in the audience. Even some of the council members nodded their approval. Thompson, his face flushed with anger, tried to defend himself, but his argument sounded weak and hollow in the face of Ethan's compelling evidence. After a lengthy debate, the city council voted unanimously to launch a formal investigation into Thompson's actions, and to issue a cease and desist order preventing him from harassing Ethan or any other resident outside the HOA's legal boundaries. As Ethan walked out of the town hall, surrounded by his cheering neighbors, he felt a sense of triumph he had never experienced before. He had stood his ground, he had fought for what was right, and he had won. He knew that this was just the beginning of a long and arduous process. Thompson, wounded but not defeated, would likely retaliate, but Ethan wasn't afraid. He had Sarah, he had the support of his community. He knew he could stand up to him. This unsolved mystery didn't feel so scary anymore. The scent of wood smoke hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the volatility of life and the limitations of good intentions. Just a week after his triumph at the town council, Ethan found himself confronted with a very different kind of crisis. He was walking with Marcus one crisp autumn afternoon, discussing the finer points of superhero costume design. When they saw it, smoke billowing from a house several doors down. His old journey was ending, and this thrilling story was starting. "Fire! Holy moly, Ethan, that's a real fire!" Marcus exclaimed, his usual theatricality amplified by the urgency of the situation. Without hesitation, Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed 911, reporting the fire and giving the address. Marcus, meanwhile, sprinted towards the house, shouting to see if anyone was inside. Flames were already licking at the roof as they approached. The front door was open, spewing thick, black smoke. A woman stumbled out, coughing violently. "Everyone's out. The kids are safe," she gasped. Before collapsing onto the lawn, Ethan rushed to her side, checking for injuries. Marcus, ever vigilant, started directing other neighbors to keep a safe distance from the house. He has now found his calling. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Within minutes, fire trucks arrived, their flashing lights illuminating the scene. Firefighters leaped out, unfurling hoses and battling the blaze. Ethan watched, his heart pounding, as the firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the flames. The smoke, the heat, the chaos. It was overwhelming. But amidst the chaos, he felt a sense of purpose, a sense of community, a sense of relief that everyone was safe. As the fire slowly died down, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. Richard Thompson, his face a mask of disapproval. He was on the phone, barking orders into the receiver. Even in the face of such devastation, Thompson seemed incapable of empathy, of putting aside his petty grievances. He was still caught in the unsolved mystery. After a few minutes he approached Ethan. "You're going to regret this, Mr. Hayes. He said you caused this and now you're going to pay." After the firefighters had left and the fire was cleared, a new notice arrived at Ethan's property. A week later, he received a fine from the HOA, citing a violation of Regulation 4.7b, failure to maintain fire safety standards, and creating a nuisance to the community. The fine was not only levied against him, but to his neighbor, for a total of $5,000. Ethan stared at the notice in disbelief. It was absurd, insulting, and utterly predictable. Thompson, it seemed, was determined to make his life a living hell, regardless of the circumstances. Thompson continued to play his part in this thrilling story. He wanted to help. He wanted to be a good neighbor. But Thompson kept throwing obstacles in his path. The fire had been a tragedy, but Thompson was turning it into a weapon, a means to further his own agenda. Ethan felt a wave of despair wash over him. Was there no end to this? Was he destined to be forever battling Thompson? Forever fighting for his right to live in peace? He needed to find an end to the story. The weight of the fine, the lingering smell of smoke, and the sheer absurdity of Thompson's actions had left Ethan feeling deflated. He needed perspective, a moment of calm, a reminder that there was more to life than HOA regulations and petty vendettas. He found himself drawn to Martha's Mercantile, the small, independent grocery store on Main Street. It was a refuge, a place where time seemed to slow down, where the scent of freshly baked bread and the sound of friendly chatter filled the air. This unsolved mystery of his life was getting old. Martha Reynolds, the store's owner, was a woman in her late 60s, with a warm smile, kind eyes, and a knack for dispensing wisdom alongside her organic produce. She'd always been a source of comfort to Ethan during his childhood summers in Maplewood. She was the one to help with this thrilling story. He found her behind the counter, arranging a display of locally grown apples. "Ethan, good to see you, dear. What brings you in today? Looking for something special?" Ethan managed a weak smile. "Just needed to get out of the house. Been dealing with some stuff." Martha's eyes narrowed with concern. "Thompson again, I presume?" Ethan sighed. "How'd you know?" Martha chuckled. "Honey, everyone in Maplewood knows about Thompson and his little kingdom. He's been tormenting people for years. You're in his journey of discovery now." She paused to help a customer, ringing up their groceries with practiced ease. He wanted to become a better person but knew how to. Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her. "It's just, I don't get it. Why is he so obsessed? Why is he so determined to make my life miserable?" Martha set down her apple arrangement. "Power, Ethan. It's a dangerous drug. It can corrupt even the best of people. And Thompson, well, Hell's always had a thirst for it. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You know, he wasn't always like this. Back when his dad ran the town council, he was a pushover. But his dad died, and he had to grow up fast. And I don't think he ever grew up the right way. She paused, sighing, looking up at the heavens. Ethan listened intently, fascinated by this glimpse into Thompson's past. So what do I do? How do I deal with him? He's fined me again, this time for the fire. He's just abusing his power. Martha shook her head sadly. That man takes and takes but never gives back. You need to stand up for yourself to Thompson. I can't stand by it anymore. Ethan fidgeted. But I am not good at all. I am not strong like you are. He was a well-meaning pushover who didn't know how to fight for himself. Martha placed a comforting hand on his arm. Honey, you don't have to be a superhero. Honey, you don't have to be a superhero. You just need to be yourself and be more assertive, but you're too nice for it. But how can I fight? I do not even know if that is the right thing to do. Ethan needed to find himself. Martha paused, thinking about it for a while. You are very kind. I suggest you keep being nice. Just be a nice and assertive man. Do not give up. That is it? Ethan smiled, thinking to himself the whole conversation. But would this small-town grocery store attorney ever be right? He needed to make a choice for himself. He needed to use his power, and do it well. He thanked Martha, got a basket of fruits and vegetables, and set on his way back home. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place the following morning. As Ethan was tending to his garden, carefully pruning the very shrubbery that had sparked this whole thrilling story, Marcus burst through the gate, his superhero costume slightly askew, his face flushed with anger. Now was the time for the unsolved mystery. Ethan, you won't believe this. That jerk Thompson, he's been harassing Martha too, Marcus exclaimed, practically vibrating with indignation. Ethan frowned. Martha? What do you mean? He's been trying to shut down her store. Said it's not in keeping with the town's aesthetic or some nonsense. He wants to replace it with another one of those soulless chain stores, Marcus explained, his voice rising with each word. A wave of anger surged through Ethan, stronger than anything he'd felt before. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for Martha, for Marcus, for the entire community of Maplewood. Thompson's petty tyranny has gone too far. His journey was at its end. That's it. That's the last straw, Ethan declared, his voice firm and resolute. I'm done being nice. I'm done being the pushover. It's time to fight back for real. Marcus grinned, his eyes gleaming behind his superhero mask. That's what I'm talking about, Ethan. Time to embrace your inner superhero. Together they hatched a plan to expose Thompson's corruption, to rally the community, and to reclaim Maplewood from his grasp. He was ready to take back his city. First, they visited Martha, offering their support and gathering information about Thompson's efforts to shut down her store. Martha, initially hesitant, eventually agreed to help, sharing documents and anecdotes that revealed the depth of Thompson's manipulation. Next, they took to social media, creating a Facebook group called Save Martha's Mercantile, sharing stories about Thompson's harassment, and urging residents to attend the next town council meeting. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, the group had hundreds of members, all united in their outrage at Thompson's actions. The day of the town council meeting arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The council chambers were packed, overflowing with residents eager to voice their opinions. Thompson, sensing the shift in public opinion, tried to control the narrative, painting himself as a defender of tradition and progress. But his words rang hollow in the face of the overwhelming support for Martha and the growing evidence of his corruption. Ethan stepped up to the podium, his voice clear and confident. He presented the evidence he and Sarah had gathered, detailing Thompson's abuse of power, his attempts to shut down Martha's store, his harassment of other residents. He spoke with passion, with conviction, with the unwavering belief that what he was doing was right. He was no longer the timid software engineer hiding behind his computer screen. He was a leader, a voice for the voiceless, a champion of the community. Then Martha took the podium, her voice trembling slightly, but her words filled with strength. She spoke of her love for Maplewood, of her commitment to serving the community, of her belief in the power of small businesses. Her words resonated with the audience, bringing tears to their eyes. Even some of the council members seemed moved by her sincerity. Finally, it was Marcus's turn. Dressed in his full superhero costume, he strode to the podium, striking a heroic pose. He delivered a passionate speech about the importance of standing up to bullies, about protecting the vulnerable, about fighting for what is right. His speech was met with cheers and applause, even laughter, a testament to his unique ability to connect with the community. When the time came for the council to vote, the outcome was clear. The council voted unanimously to reject Thompson's proposal, to shut down Martha's store, and to launch a formal investigation into his conduct. Thompson, his face flushed with anger and defeat, stormed out of the chambers, his reign of terror finally at an end. As Ethan walked out of the town hall, surrounded by his cheering neighbors, he felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. He had found his voice, his purpose, his place in the world. He was no longer just a software engineer. He was a leader, a friend, a member of something bigger than himself. His thrilling story had ended, but now a great story was starting, and he could not wait to see it. Martha and Marcus rushed to his side, their faces beaming with pride. "You did it, Ethan, you saved the day," Martha exclaimed, embracing him warmly. "You were amazing, Ethan. A true superhero," Marcus added, giving him a high five. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his heart. He had stood his ground, he had fought for what was right, and he had won. And in doing so, he had not only saved his community, but he had also saved himself. This was what the hero was doing all the time. From Ethan's journey in Maplewood, several valuable life lessons emerge. First, standing up to bullies even when intimidated is crucial. Whether it's a power-hungry HOA president or a toxic colleague, assertiveness protects your rights and well-being. Second, community support is a powerful asset. Surrounding yourself with allies provides strength and perspective during challenging times, fostering resilience. Third, embrace your unique strengths. Ethan used his tech skills to expose Thompson's overreach, demonstrating that your individual talents can become powerful tools for positive change. Furthermore, don't underestimate the wisdom of elders. Martha's guidance helped Ethan find his voice and courage. Open yourself to advice from those with experience. Finally, authenticity triumphs. Ethan's transformation wasn't about becoming a superhero, but about embracing his true self, acting with kindness and assertiveness. As demonstrated through this thrilling story, remember that applying these lessons requires self-reflection and action. But the potential for personal growth and meaningful change is profound. Embrace your journey.